to the Growth Whisperers, where everything we talk about is building enduring great companies, companies that last, companies that people are proud to work for, companies that outperform. As always, today I'm joined by my co-host, Kevin Lawrence. Kevin, hello there. How are you doing today?
Doing great, Brad. Enjoying summer. Looking forward to a few weeks off. And yeah, life's good.
Good to hear. Good to hear. I am also going good. Things are nice in this part of the world. We've had a busy period after the financial year, which is June 30 for us, and then we reset. So it's been quite busy, and now we've just had a moment after that to recalibrate. We always like to start with a word of the day or a phrase. What might be on your mind today, Kev?
It's just sunshine. And I was out at a farmer's market this morning, and this woman had this shirt on that said sunshine and coffee. No, sunshine. It's actually said sunshine and wine. That's what it said. And just, and whether it's, my brain goes to coffee. I love coffee. But it's sunshine and wine. Basically how sunshine just lifts your spirit. And it's a metaphor in companies where there's always sunshine. There's always good news. There's always good things. And we need to be reminded of it sometimes. So sunshine is the good news that warms our souls, makes us feel good. And it's a wonderful thing to remember at work.
Very good. Very good. Well, mine is completely unrelated. And it's a bit to do with this episode today, but it's about interest rates and some of the challenges that we're seeing. Like, I'm just going from one meeting to the next meeting to the next, and it's either staff shortages or it's, input costs, like cost of goods that are increasing. A lot of
ocean freight, trucking, all kinds of weird stuff.
There's all of that. And so it's just about validating your ideas. It seems like with so many variables changing that you've got to make sure that any of the changes that you're making are going to be the right changes. And we need to make changes in the business.
Yep. On your toes. So what was yours? Mine was sunshine. Yours was
validate your changes.
God, how the hell do those go together? I don't know. Sunshine validation. Now anyway, let's move on. There's nothing here to look at. So what are we talking about today? We're talking about validation. Yeah. And we'll put a little sunshine on it. Man, that's cheesy. Okay. So yeah, tell us about the topic today.
All right. So this is one of Jim Collins's concepts: fire bullets before cannonballs. And this is how he validates ideas. And it's a phrase that you may have heard if you're not familiar with Jim Collins' work, fire bullets before cannonballs, but it comes from his books. In particular, Great by Choice. And so we've got a saying in Australia, and it's don't bet the farm. And so what that means,
we got the same one here.
Yeah. Okay. So it's you need to not gamble everything, because you may end up with nothing. You've got to make sure that you are validating your ideas, that you're testing, and that you're only taking risks where you can afford to lose, or that you're completely certain that it's got a very high chance of success. So we're talking about this concept, fire bullets before cannonballs. And as a quick note, you can also refer to episode 86, what is productive paranoia and why it's a critical leadership tool of the Growth Whisperers. And then episode 9, electric bikes, cheating versus innovation, and entrepreneur to CEO. We've got information about this concept. But the key point here is we're often told that we're too bold, or we see people that are too bold or too conservative. If you raise an idea within a group, some people are going to be like, it's definitely going to work. Yep. This is going to save the company. This is going to set us up for success. Or on the other side, there are going to be people who are going to say, it's never going to work. It's a load of garbage.
And they're all just opinions. They all have no freaking idea. They think they know. And there's this great thing is that no idea or product ever survives first contact with the customer, the market. The customers vote. on our ideas. And unfortunately, people spend way too much time testing in the laboratory or the boardroom, and they don't get out there and talk to the damn customers. So it's, even interesting. We had our team meeting recently, or quarterly meeting, and we had what seemed like a brilliant idea that came out of the meeting. It was a very good idea. Well, I had a meeting that same night with the CEO, and I ran it by him, and he's like, your idea is really good, but it actually is more relevant here for me. The pain here is for me. And I talked to another CEO the next day. And so as I'm calibrating, the idea in the boardroom sounded perfect. You go and start talking to people about it, and they're like, well, maybe what about this? What about that? And that's a little bit of market research. And then there's the actual test. The key is that people don't know what works. You never know what works, because often what works is counterintuitive. Often you'll get better sales by increasing your price than decreasing your price, right? Very often. But that's not how people think. So the idea of this is it protects us from our egos. It protects us from thinking that we know, and puts us back into scientist mode. Let's test it and see. And that's the critical piece here is let's test it in the market with a bullet, a simple low risk test, versus thinking that we know. And generally, especially, Hollywood has done a great job of portraying CEOs and successful people as being wild risk takers. They're not the successful ones,
not the successful ones. That's the point.
It is the point. It's exciting to create big, bold, risky moves. It just doesn't consistently work. It's kind of like going to the casino and putting everything on black.
And if you pick up a magazine, maybe, or look online at any of the business, like the Fortune magazine or any of those types, they're going to be telling the stories about the big risky bets that paid off, right?
Because it's interesting.
But that's not what works. It's the relentless focus on the boring basics. And within that context, if you're going to take a risk, you want to validate that risk. You want to give it a good chance to work, to prove itself, and then take the big bet.
Yes, because as you get bigger, those bets are more impactful. And I've seen many kinds. And one of the big ones people do is acquisitions. There's all this theory in the boardroom about the power of acquisitions. It's quite fascinating, actually. Oh, and we're going to get this. After doing this almost 30 years, you get to see decisions all the way through their life cycle, through execution. And you get to see all the theory in business books, most business books, versus what actually happens. It's very, very different. And, and so even in this, we take acquisitions. It was very smart. I was in a company the other day, and we're doing some long-term planning, and I'm like, we should consider acquisitions. At a certain point, every executive talks about that because that's what you think the big kids do, right? And it may or may not be a good idea. It depends. But somebody in the room was smart. Hey, let's try a little one and see how it goes, right? If we've got 30 million of extra cash, let's spend 2 and try it. How do we do with it? Can we integrate it? Can we get the theoretical value out of it? But let's try small versus, we're a company that does, 150 million of revenue, and let's go acquire someone that does 200 million.
Yeah. Because that'd be cool.
And people do that. And then let's just just give it all for one for all, one shot at it. Hope it works.
Because that'd be cool. And that would be very stimulating for my ego.
Very exciting.
Oh.
Way more exciting than driving out efficiency of the per unit cost by 2.37 cents per unit.
Yeah.
Like finding 2.37 cents per unit of efficiency, or taking our labor rate from being 14% of sales down to, or labor cost, from 14% to 12.5%, or even better, our SG&A. SG&A is running at 14.5%, and it should be 11.5%. Or how do we get more sales and do price increases to our customers? Like all this stuff is not near as fun as doing something new, sexy, and exciting.
Which would you rather speak about at the barbecue?
Exactly. What do you want to tell your friends? More than that, what do you want in your resume?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I decreased SG&A from 14.4 to 12.1. Actually, I would be impressed by that.
So would I.
Versus I came up with because we know relentless execution is what pays. But you get these people doing acquisitions and doing this and working with private equity and doing all this wonderful stuff. It just is a side note. That's why, when I see IT leaders in companies start to get the awards from the software companies, I'm like, okay, we're in trouble now.
Yeah.
One, we may or may not be overpaying, but two, the IT person is getting so excited about external validation that either they're pumping themselves up for a career move or they're just loving all the accolades. Because I've also seen a few of those. Sometimes they give you big awards before the system breaks because they know it's coming. Anyway, I diverge.
Let's steer it back. So what is it?
What are we talking about, Brad? No,
we're talking about bullets before cannonballs.
That's
so what
right.
is it? It's a concept from Great by Choice, one of Jim Collins' books.
Spectacular book. Yeah.
First of all, you fire bullets, which is low cost, low risk, low distraction experiments to figure out what will work. So you calibrate your line of sight by taking small shots. So that way you know what will work, or you've validated your ideas. Then, once you have validated your experiment, you can concentrate the resources into a big bet.
And to clarify, these experiments are done with real paying customers or real cash spent in your operations on costs or other things. These aren't boardroom experiments. This is not market research. This is actually doing it in a small, safe way.
Yeah. So why does it matter? Because when we were preparing for this episode, you said this, Kevin, I thought it was just brilliant. No one is smart enough or experienced enough to know what will or won't work, right? Despite what they say, no matter how good a salesperson they are or how excellent at presenting they are, no one actually knows what will work. Only the market can tell us that. And the
more I know, the more experienced I get, the more you'll hear that come out of my mouth in meetings. I have the most experience of almost anybody in the room of scaling businesses in any room that I'm in. And more as I get in over time, I say that more and more often. I say, I don't know what's going to work here. How do we set ourselves up to test it?
That's the
The more I know, the less I know.
That's the scientist mantra, right? The more that I learn, the more I understand, the less I realize I know.
Yep.
And so once you've, where were we? We are at, once you've validated your experiment, you can concentrate the resources into a big bet. Thank you. So the big bet is, all right, now let's spend the $30 million rather than the $2 million and let's go after that, or whatever it might be. So the ability to turn small proven ideas or bullets into huge hits or cannonballs counts more than the sheer amount of innovation. That's so important because innovation is such a catch word today, or a catchy word. We've got to have an innovation department. The more ideas, the better. But it's actually not true. It's the ability to validate ideas effectively that matters the most.
Yes. Because people get excited about all those new ideas. And truly, we want to validate the thinking so we don't waste time and resources chasing something that's not going to pay. It's interesting as you're talking about pure innovation. For those of you watching on video, you can see behind me. There's a model behind my shoulder of a Porsche 911 engine. That Porsche 911 engine has not changed that much over the entire time. And I think the first Porsche was in the 60s that I'm aware of. Might be some, but anyways, in the 60s, I'm pretty sure they started. The shape of the car hasn't changed much. The engine hasn't changed much in design. The quality of the components, the performance, all that stuff has improved year on year on year. But they've innovated on the same platform again and again and again and again and again and again, making it better, 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 better. Right? And that's lots of little tests and lots of little experiments versus doing something wildly crazy that we can do and should do.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to read this quick excerpt from Jim Collins' website because it explains why it's called Fire Bullets Before Cannonballs. Picture yourself at sea, a hostile ship bearing down on you. You have a limited amount of gunpowder. You take all your gunpowder and use it to fire a big cannonball. The cannonball flies out over the ocean and misses the target, off by 40 degrees. You turn to your stockpile and discover that you're out of gunpowder. You die. But suppose instead that, suppose
such a great writer.
But suppose instead that when you see the ship bearing down, you take a little bit of gunpowder and fire a bullet. It misses by 40 degrees. You make another bullet and fire. It misses by 30 degrees. You make a third bullet and fire, missing by only 10 degrees. The next bullet hits, ping, the hull of the oncoming ship. Now you take all the remaining gunpowder and fire a big cannonball along the same line of sight, which sinks the enemy ship, and you live. And so that's where the phrase come from. And this is obviously an analogy to what he observed in these companies that he analyzed in the Great Buy Choice study, that these companies were deciding to take these small bets before they took the big bets. So let's move on to the problem. The problem here is pure innovation. Okay. People get excited when you come up with a new idea. It's exciting. And especially if you're an entrepreneur or working in an entrepreneurial company. Some people are just like idea factories, right? They're pumping out ideas all the time, every week almost. But there's no validation. They're surrounded by all of these great ideas, but they never validate them. And sometimes they bet on them because of their emotion. Okay. So creativity is the great thing about entrepreneurship, but it's also the problem with entrepreneurship is that creativity, the brain loves it, but the discipline is hard. The brain loves creativity and hates the discipline. That's really why business is about a relentless focus on the boring basics.
Ideas, like I said, ideas are easy. Ideas are everywhere. There are high value creative solutions to problems for sure. And ideally customer problems, but it's the relentless execution that pays. But when you get too caught up into creativity, it's chaotic and it's actually really dangerous for business.
And I'll tell you one thing. Here's what is not a bullet, is calling something low-hanging fruit. Low-hanging fruit is, that's one of the words, one of the phrases that I just hate, because people say,
really? Why?
Because it's anecdotal. It just says to people, this is the easy way, and we should just do the easy way.
Oh, got it. It's an indication of being easy and lazy versus strategic and disciplined.
Correct. And so if you look at an idea and saying, oh, that's the low-hanging fruit, we should do that, that is not firing a bullet. That is not validating the idea. It is just,
I got it. It's most likely
labeling something.
just doing something sloppy and easy, versus a bullet is meant to test a highly valuable hypothesis, an idea we have that could be notably beneficial to our customer, ourselves, whatever it is. It's testing something of great importance, but with small little chunks to prove it first.
Yeah. So rather than saying that's the low-hanging fruit, you could say, all right, well, let's test that by firing a bullet. We'll just do a very small trial.
The other thing with pure innovation is that usually companies benefit more from relentless execution and discipline than they do innovation.
Yeah.
People often over-innovate. And when we're starting with companies, they got all this exciting stuff they're doing. And for some companies, it's great. But usually the value creation is disciplined execution of stuff they're already doing that's already good, and taking that goodness and making it great.
Yeah. You look at you look at a company like Apple, and we think, oh, they're great leaders at innovation, but most of the time they're just building on other people's ideas.
Yes, and executing with great rigor.
Exactly.
Yep. Yeah, the innovation is the easy. Generally, unless you're in deep scientific realms, the innovation is the easy part. It's the execution. So that's why the bullets, and ideally your bullets are aimed at things that could be innovation and also just better execution from the perspective of the customer. It's all about benefiting the customer. The second thing about you, so the first thing is the problem with pure innovation. Second is it forces you to follow a process, and that's the idea. Rather than randomness and chaos and doing what you want, and how excited it's a process that brings rigor and discipline to your new ideas, and we'll call it innovation. And basically, I like to think about it as it forces you to prove it in the marketplace rather than proving it in the boardroom, and that's different. Right. And it's almost like, a child could be, your kid, my son, he could be a great, at simulated video games versus some stuff in the real world. It's a different skill. Yeah. And so to take it from theory to practice, it's a disciplined way to make that happen.
Imagine if you've got a leadership team in a room and there's one person who's really for the idea and someone who's really against the idea. Then by following a process and forcing everyone to get to a point where are we prepared to fire a bullet, it takes the personalities out, and then we will let the science decide. We will let the process decide.
And if you do it right, because these are small tests, you can often do both. Okay, there's two different people have two different ideas, and if we think those are our top two ideas, we can't decide. Well, let's test both. It's called A/B testing in the software world and marketing. You test to see which produces a better result. The key is you got to give it a fair test. And this is the key thing with bullets. In order to test a bullet successfully, which is a discipline, you also need a disciplined approach. So for example, I was with someone that was doing a new test recently, and they were using the discipline of kindergarten kids, trying to do a very high value test. Well, that's not, you don't get good data back if you don't have tight controls and discipline around the test. So bullets are tests, discipline tests, but you need disciplined execution of those discipline tests to actually give it a fair shake and to truly be able to validate it. And often if someone's doing off the corner of the desk, sometimes we don't truly give it our all, and it's hard to judge whether it was failed execution of the idea or a failed idea. So that's why you gotta set them up real good.
So the third point is it reduces the financial risk of a big bet. It's exciting to take a big bet, right? There's no doubt about it. But it's exciting because it comes with the risk that it's going to fail.
Yes.
And it reduces that risk and therefore helps us to endure. The great by choice companies or comparison companies also fired cannonballs, but they were uncalibrated. That's the important point that Jim makes. They were untested in the market to validate that they would actually work. Comparison companies had uncalibrated cannonballs flying all over the place.
Right. And that the comparison is the underperforming companies, just to ground people back in Jim's work in. We see it all the time.
Yeah.
We see people make these big, bold. I just had one today. Came into my email over the weekend. I was looking at it, and this client worked with this firm to say, what could our product be like in the future? Mm-hmm. They came back with the most impressive deck. Man, this stuff looks sexy. It looks slick. It looks smart. And let me read you my exact words I wrote to the CEO. I said, beautiful work. Let's be very sure to debate this in a small strategic group before deciding on this direction. It looks beautiful and compelling and could be a very bad strategic move for the business. Not saying that it is a bad move, but that it could be. I only know enough to be cautious and concerned and need more information, because it's beautiful, sexy stuff that appeals to the ego. It looks like it was developed by Apple. My God, in my mind, I don't even know if we should develop the product. Never mind how amazing it looks. So, because it's a absolute freaking cannonball.
Yeah.
Like when you go down this road, it's not a little move. Point of it being is that, but I look at that presentation, I'm going, so many people would choose it because it looks so sexy and it's so appealing, but under the surface, it could be horrible. We need to find a safe way to test it.
And people might be listening thinking, yeah, but sometimes opportunities just pop up. Like, we didn't know that the opportunity was going to arise to acquire our largest competitor, or that we would come up with this great idea. But it's, even when it's not expected, it is even more important to fire a bullet before a cannonball.
So one of my most successful clients said, look, I'm never going to make a decision on the spot, a big decision. I'm always going to sleep on every decision and think it through thoroughly. Now, if someone wants to sell me their Rolex store, he was in retail, I am going to decide within about 7 minutes. We're just going to work out the price. But if he's selling a Rolex store, I'm his buyer. Let's go. Right? So there's certain things that are no-brainers. Yeah. And then there's other things that are not, but this person's already in retail, understands luxury, all of those other things.
He's fired bullets in that direction before.
Tons. He's done exactly. Yeah. And he knows the space like the back of his hand or the back of his wrist in the case of watches. But the point of it is, there's some things that are no-brainers. It's just a matter of banging out the price, but it's not a venture into a new space. So if it was his, let's go.
Let's move on to the next one. It keeps teams focused on business as usual, and it helps avoid distractions that can be damaging. When you get a big opportunity come in, it can suddenly distract many people in the business, and then the business's current strategy or financials will be hit. Yes, and it can not only cost money in that direction, but it can also
there's an opportunity cost.
Yeah.
That's why I'm very careful with companies when they want to expand into new countries and new markets. It's exciting, and it's like acquisitions, exciting and very distracting. It better be worth it.
It better be worth it. And then finally, sometimes bullets work. Sometimes you go from the 40, 30, hopefully 20, 10 degrees, and then you get that ping. And then when that happens, that's when you've got to go for it. That's when it's like, all right, we know that this works.
Because you've de-risked it. Yes, because you know it works. You've proven it works. It's no longer a risky, bold move. It's now almost silly not to do it, because you know it's like printing money. We're going to invest single dollar bills, and $10 bills come back.
And why does that matter?
Because it's proven. It's gone from an idea to a commercial success. It's proven. It's got the seeds of commercial success. And if you're trying to build an enduring great business, you want to be getting a return on your capital, not burning your capital.
Because some people won't bet. Because some people at that point, they will.
Some people still won't. Some people still won't.
That's the point.
It's like if you are able to count cards, and if it were legal, if you're able to count cards, and you know statistically there's a 90% probability that you're going to be able to win the next hand, you should take every dollar you have and do it, or most of the dollars you have. And some people still won't. So it's bullets and cannonballs is being more conservative until it's proven, generally, than the average population, and then more aggressive than typical once you know it works. So it's both.
Yeah. Very good. So let's have a quick summary, and then we'll move to wrap up. So fire bullets before cannonballs. So what is it? It's a concept from Great by Choice. We do small, low risk, low cost, low distraction experiments to figure out what will work, and then we go for it. Why does it matter? It matters because this is risky and this is distracting, and it takes us away from a relentless focus on the boring basics. No one is smart enough or experienced enough to know what will or won't work. So the problem with pure innovation is that people get excited, and people are like idea factories, pumping out ideas, but there's no validation, and it's all about the execution. Kev, do you want to walk us through the last few there?
Yeah. What number are we on there, Brad?
Number 2.
Number 2. Okay. And finally, it reduces the risk of a big bet, which is Brad already talked about, waste money, and more importantly, distracts the organization. Number 4, keeps the team focused on the core business, not pulling them away by the exciting stuff that may not go anywhere. And finally, when it works, then you got to back up the truck of cash and fire that cannonball. Go for it. And then, because you know you're going to win.
Awesome. A good chat. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's episode about firing bullets before cannonballs. You may want to check us out on YouTube if you just search The Growth Whisperers. Kevin has an interesting newsletter that he pumps out every week, and you'll find Kevin at lawrenceandco.com. And I have the same, a newsletter that I produce every week, and you'll find me, Brad, at evolutionpartners.com.au. Hope you've enjoyed the episode. Do enjoy your week.